What is going on, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer, Tyler Horka, and Jack Soble live on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel with a new show. We're going to be doing this on Wednesday nights called the Notre Dame Six Pack. 6 topics. The guys are going to take 6 minutes for each topic and break it down. Folks, please hit the thumbs up on this video. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel for more content. Blueandgold.com is your home for all things Notre Dame football, basketball, and recruiting coverage. Fellas, I trust that you guys are well on this Wednesday evening.
I am. I'm ready to go, man. I don't have a 6-pack with me. I usually save that for the weekends, but we're doing a 6-pack on Wednesdays from now on, and that's going to be something for these people to look forward to for sure.
Yeah, very much looking forward to this as well. We've had this plan for a while. Glad to finally launch it. I love the concept. Like Tyler, I do not have a 6-pack of beer on me. I have at least 6 beers in my fridge. If you'd like me to get them, Mike, just let me know, and we can arrange that.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into the topics for today. The first one being the press conference that the media had locally with Chris Ash, the defensive coordinator, and Ja'Juan Seider. So 6 minutes on this topic, and I'll throw it first to Tyler. Just your quick impressions in talking to these guys.
Yeah, impressive guys. They understood the assignment, and I don't want to steal too much from Jack because I think he put this at the blueandgold.com message board pretty shortly thereafter. He might have still been in the parking lot, Jack. You're going to have to clarify with us because when I got home and I saw the timing of that message board thread go out, I was like, man, he's working around the clock in all different locations. Anyway, they understood the assignment in the sense that, like Chris Ash, one of the first things that he said, the first question that he got was, hey, what's your defensive philosophy? What are you going to do here at Notre Dame? And he said, hey, man, I'm going to let Notre Dame be Notre Dame. They got good players. They have a good foundation in place from Al Golden being here for 3 years. And he's going to just build off that, enhance that, if you will. That was Marcus Freeman's buzzword for a while, right? Chris Ash is taking it over and stealing it for a second there. But I don't mind that because I agree. And then with Ja'Juan Seider, obviously you have Jeremiah Love in place. You have Jadarian Price and Neas Williams. He talked about all 3 of those guys. He realizes that he has some of the best running backs in the country to work with. But he also realizes that he's going to have to recruit at a really high level because that's what Dylan McCullough was doing. That's the only reason he has these guys at his disposal at Notre Dame is McCullough was recruiting at an outstanding clip. And I really liked what he said about recruiting. He says, nobody's going to outwork me. I'm going to get the guys that I need. So sort of just 2 guys taking over for 2 really good head coaches that preceded them. And I was really impressed with what they had to say about their respective situations coming into Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'll echo that for what it's worth. I was in the parking lot when I made that message board post. But I will echo the point on Ash real quick on Seider because I think Ash is the hire that I think people have more questions about because with Seider it's like, oh, you got one of the best running backs in the country to coach the running backs. Great job, Marcus Freeman. But I think so. I was actually going to address the first comment in that, like, what was the Freeman Seider connection? I believe it was Tim Hyde who speculated that, probably a couple others around the beat, that it was Jared Parker who they knew each other through. And Parker, I think you pointed this out, Tyler, coached with Seider at Marshall in 2011. Seider specifically said 14 years ago, so that's the point he was referencing. And Penn State in 2019. That really helped bring him to South Bend. So the biggest question I had for Seider was why'd you come here? The biggest question for Ash, I thought as well, was how much are you going to take from Al Golden's defense, and how much are you going to implant your own? And he made this. I think it's worth reemphasizing. Like, he made this extremely clear multiple times, unprompted. Like, this is the Notre Dame defense. This is not my defense. Like, he'd recognize, like, hey, I would be crazy to overhaul this when it's worked so well for 2 years. The other thing I'll mention with Ash is that, like, he went around. It's worth noting he went around the room to shake every media member's hand, which is I haven't been here for that long. That's the first time I've seen a coach do that, so that was appreciated, and it was a good first impression from both coaches, I think. One last note on Ash before I throw it back to you, Tyler. Overall, in general, like, he's a guy who, like, when you look at his Wikipedia page, you're like, wait, what? That's the best you can do to replace one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, and you're hiring a coordinator at Notre Dame. as you get to know him and you talk to people who know him, the more you dig, the more you like about this hire. And I'm much higher on it now than I was when the hire was made.
Yeah, I'll just keep it with Ash for a quick second here, because there were some things that were kind of striking to me, and there were just like quick, easy things. He said he loved what he was doing. He was still in the player personnel department at Jacksonville, right? That was the most recent
pro
thing.
scout. Yeah, he was a pro scout.
So he said he liked what he was doing and was not looking for other jobs. And then Marcus Freeman makes the call, and all of a sudden, when Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame, that's who's showing up on the phone line. All of a sudden, you are looking for another job, and that's the one. Ja'Juan Seider, I think, it sounded like the same thing. It was, hey, man, I was at Penn State for 7 seasons. I could probably be there for 17 and be completely fine if I'm not trying to be a head coach or a coordinator, which it does sound like he might want to do that as well. He kind of alluded to that. But then another thing with Chris Ash is, like, he sounds like a Marcus Freeman clone, and that's what Al Golden was too. Like, it maybe took Al Golden some time coming in from the NFL, and again, Chris Ash is coming in from the NFL as well, to like get fully on the same page as Freeman. But when Ash was talking about playing fast and physical, and who cares about scheme and 4-3 or 3-4 or nickel or whatever, as long as you're not playing fast, it doesn't matter. And that was the biggest thing for him. And I think Seider honestly said some of the same things as well. He was another quick quote. I just love pulling these quick quotes from what these guys said. Seider was like, if I'm teaching these guys how to run on the first day of spring ball, then I've recruited the wrong guys. And that just goes back to Love, Price, Williams, Kedron Young, Nolan James, all these. They know how to be running backs. He's not going to have to teach them that. He's just going to kind of refine their game. So I think he's in a really good spot.
Real quick notes. I would not expect Seider to be. I would not expect Jeremiah Love to be a 20 carry per year guy, as people wanted when McCullough left. Freeman and him share this philosophy that splitting carries is helpful both for prolonging the running back's longevity and for the offense. Ash said Notre Dame can have a very good defensive line if they stay healthy, and he will not coach a position. Mike Mickens will continue to oversee all defensive backs.
Oh, I mean, come on. The bell it's clean. It's clean. All right, moving along. The quarterback battle, there's really so many different ways that we can go with this one, as I just misclicked here. But
we follow up Tim Hyde on this one, man.
Yeah, so let's talk about the quarterback battle. Throw it to Jack. I don't really know specifically where you want to go with this, Jack. It was something that we had a good time talking about last night in the show. But yeah, just thoughts on as we kind of. I feel like it's appropriate now to start talking about this as we're close to spring ball. It's just a couple weeks away.
Yeah, I'll kick this off by saying I think anyone who says they know for sure that which way the quarterback battle is going to go doesn't particularly know what they're talking about. I think you can make a case for CJ Carr and Steve Angeli. I think it would be a pleasant surprise to a lot of people if Kenny Minchey was really involved here. We can't say too much on this, but I think based on our conversations with people around the building and in the building, we think Kenny Minchey's probably going to be third in this competition. But I would say I'm about 52% CJ Carr at the moment. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Tyler.
I've been leaning in on Steve Angeli lately. I don't know if that's just because I want to be different from you. And I would say most people, and not just you specifically, most people are CJ Carr in this, right? Like, that's the vibe that I get. If you asked the top guys at the other outlets that we see every day for games, practices, and media availabilities, I think if you polled most of them, put them in a pool, yeah, Mike, we don't see you for all of these things, so I can't include you in this. They would say CJ Carr. And to be completely frank, I was in that camp probably 3 months ago or 4 months ago, like mid-season, when we were not seeing a whole lot of Steve Angeli. We basically saw the same amount of Steve Angeli this past season that we saw the season before, right? Garbage time. He goes out there. He throws 5 touchdowns in the season. They're all in the fourth quarter. What's it matter? CJ Carr is going to start the next season, right? No matter what. I don't know. Now that the season's finally over and that Steve Angeli does not have anyone ahead of him, he's the elder statesman. He's a top dog looking down at everybody else in that group from a seniority perspective. And there's just something speaking to me that says, hey, yeah, okay, every time he did get into those games, he played really well. Like I can only think of a couple throws where I was like, ooh, dude, that didn't look very good. He's thrown 100 balls in his career at this point, I think. I should have looked at the numbers, but like they've added up, and most of them have been really good. I get it against subpar competition, but he's playing with 2s and 3s around him as well. So like if you put Steve Angeli in a number 1 QB situation, kind of like you did in the Orange Bowl for a drive, and he put 3 points on the board when Notre Dame really needed it, I think he could be a really successful quarterback. And I firmly believe that Notre Dame's coaching staff is starting to be like, yo, we've had this guy for 4 years. Why are we not going to give him his shot? Why are we going to give the junior his shot over him, Minchie, or the sophomore, Carr? I'm starting to really believe that Steve Angeli, as a senior, is going to be given the reins to this football team.
Yeah, I mean, he'll certainly have a shot. He'll start spring camp as a starter. He's earned that based on his veteran status and his experience. There are a couple things with Angeli, and I'm not going to say athleticism because he's athletic enough, and I don't think CJ Carr is demonstratively more athletic than him. It's the pocket awareness, and I promise this is something I was going to touch on before. Anonymous, the commenter, mentioned it, but like Angeli has shown a concerning lack of pocket awareness in the limited times we've seen him, and that's not it's the pressure to sack ratio. It's like not sensing pressure. It's kind of not really knowing when to escape the pocket, when to hang in there. And that's the one thing that like I like a lot of what I saw from Angeli. Obviously, the accuracy, the decision making, the quick release, but I think he's got a strong enough arm. The pocket awareness is what I think causes the pressure to sack ratio to be so high for him. And it's something that in the practice action we saw from Carr, we saw him show some really good pocket awareness. I think that's a huge trait for quarterbacks, and it's something that you can't really teach, in my opinion. This is something that for a lot of them, you either have it or you don't. And that when I keep playing this scenario in my head, but I keep coming back to the pocket awareness. Why I think Carr is eventually gonna win the shot. We've also seen like the way the ball comes out of his hand. Kyle Kelly really hammers this point home. Like the ball just comes out of his hand differently. Simple as that. Yeah. What I don't think, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, Tyler. A lot of people have suggested start the season with Angeli to try and beat Miami and A&M, and then with the plan to go to Carr. I don't like this idea for a couple reasons. But much more to the point, this has never struck me as Marcus Freeman's style. I think, in the 12-team playoff, it's worth losing that Miami game if you go with Carr as a starter and he gains experience that'll be helpful down the line. You can lose that Miami game and still make the playoff and win the national championship. You have to start the quarterback against Miami who you think gives you the best chance of doing that, not necessarily to beat Miami.
All right, I'm going to take the floor here for the final 50 seconds because I think you put me on a tee perfectly. I would not start Steve Angeli with a plan, like you said, to go to anyone else in subsequent games. However, I can see a scenario where you start him because you believe in him, and that's Marcus Freeman's style, like you said. The belief thing. You believe in him. You think he's going to be your starter in December. That's why you're starting him in September. As much as I like Steve Angeli, it might pain Mike Singer to hear this. I could see a scenario where you start him, you have all that belief, and eventually you do move on because of what you were talking about with the pocket awareness, Jack. If this guy starts taking way too many sacks and it's not just he hasn't done this enough thing, it's like actually who he is, you got to move on to Carr or you got to move on to Minchie because they are both more mobile than Angeli. That is a fact.
I do agree with a lot of what you just said, Ty. And as Tim and I get closer to, or as we get closer to spring ball, Tim and I are gonna. I'm gonna in my show with him. I'm gonna give my full prediction because I think I'm gonna be spot on with my thoughts on it. Breakout candidates, kind of as we get into spring ball. Who do you guys think might really emerge? I think it's Tyler's turn, so Tyler, we'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I think we should kind of go one by one with these, Jack, and like in 6 minutes, rattle off as many as we can until we can't no more. A lot of these guys are probably people we've written about in these, hey, we're getting close to spring ball, but we're not already at spring ball.
The way too early content that
The way
everyone
too early content, exactly, which people are always scoff at it, but it gets eaten up. So I'm going to start with an oddball one, and I wrote about him not in a breakout context, but I think it goes hand in hand. I really think that some of these guys that you see in like special team staples, they're not just that because Notre Dame thinks that's the only place that they're going to be able to use them their whole career. They're that because they're like preparing them for something special. I think that Logan Thomas, whether it's because Jordan Botelho is not back in full capacity early, or same thing with Boubacar Traore, or it's just like Notre Dame needs somebody other than Riley Mills, who's a defensive tackle, to lead them in sacks. What did he have? Like 5 or 6? Like put your
7.5, but go ahead.
Yeah, like I like Logan Thomas because I think once he bulks up, like something's going to click. And I don't know if it's going to click as a true sophomore, but I think he's a breakout candidate now. And if he hasn't broken out in 2025, I think he's a breakout candidate in 2026. Like he's a guy that's going to keep popping up on these lists.
Well, let me just quickly say there are 2 ways to define breakout. There's either the was playing and now he's a stud, or it's the he wasn't playing and now he's playing and contributing. I think Thomas definitely fits the former category. I kind of see him as like what I think they'll say what they said about Jaden Ausberry last year about Logan Thomas this year, as in like we're not sure how, but we know we need to get him on the field. That was the context around Ausberry. For a breakout guy kind of fitting in the first category, I like Kingston Viliamuasa, dude. I think is going to have an awesome year. I just really liked what I saw from KVA in the playoff. He surprised me with how much he played. I think he outsnapped Kaiser in the Natty, which is crazy. But he earned those reps in the Orange Bowl where he had an amazing game, I thought, in the Orange Bowl. I think he wins that will linebacker job and starts alongside Drake Bowen.
Let me go to the other side of the ball for the first time in this segment. I think that Mike Denbrock is a very smart guy, so I'm just going to believe him on this one, even though we have not seen it. Like, you can't keep saying what you've said about KK Smith and not have him break out at some point. And I'm going to take it a step further with the Notre Dame wide receiver room that I know, Jack, you're pretty high on. You're an optimistic person when it comes to that group from year to year. You've kind of seen that upward trajectory. I'm with Mike Singer in that I've seen more of just like stagnant, maybe even some like up and down like that. I get it. Will Pauling, Malachi Fields come in. It looks on paper that this unit's going to be better than last year's, but I still think there's going to be some lulls where you're sitting there saying, hey, we need something from somebody. Why not KK Smith? Why not the guy that Mike Denbrock has literally compared to Will Fuller? Big shoes, lofty expectations. He finally goes into a season healthy. Hopefully he stays it. I'm going KK Smith.
Well, to be clear, the wide receivers were better last year than they were the year before.
This is a low bar, man.
I know really it's a low bar, but they went from actively harming the offense to just kind of And I thought, I mean, obviously they made plays. Greathouse made plays in the playoffs. Collins caught a touchdown. Faison had a great first round. So we'll see. I think they're trending up. I like the KK Smith shout. I'm going to go to the offensive line. I think Charles Jagasaw joins All-American conversations. I think whether you play him at tackle or guard, I think to do what he did in the playoff was incredible in his first 2 games of real action. Like he's really only played in 3 games in his career, the Sun Bowl and the Orange Bowl and the national championship. I think he's gonna have a fantastic season, and he's also super valuable to the point where like he's clearly shown the ability to play 2 different spots at 2 different weeks and play well. So if you do suffer an injury on the offensive line, you have a guy in Jagasaw who can play both, and it's like, oh, Billy Schrouth's hurt, Jagasaw moves from tackle to guard. Oh, Wagner's hurt, Jagasaw moved back out to tackle. It's a huge asset to have.
I'm going to go with someone who's played a lot more than Charles Jagasaw, but in kind of a similar vein, when you look at him, you're like, oh, has he really played that much? Like, has he played a lot? Gabriel Rubio is a guy who's literally been behind a couple defensive tackles on the depth chart his entire time here. Like Howard Cross, Riley Mills, 2 guys who are at the NFL Combine. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. They've always been there. And then Rubio has the personal thing. He has a couple injuries. It's one thing after the other has not allowed him to fully break out. That's the category that we're talking about here. That being in mind, like if he is healthy, those guys are out of the way now. This could actually be a true breakout year in a way that he hasn't had. He's always been depth chart reserve guy. He's not going to be that this year. If all things go his way, he will be a starter, and maybe he'll be a really good one for Notre Dame. Maybe there will be no drop off from Mills or Cross to Gabriel Rubio. So I'm going in that direction with my next pick.
He's a huge ceiling raiser if he does truly break out, given the lack of perceived ceiling at that position. I will end this with, I think Tay Johnson is going to contribute in some capacity and contribute in some capacity in 2025, become a really, really good starter in 2026.
Mike Singer is muted. Our loyal host is muted.
Rookie mistake, man. Been doing this for 5 years. You'd think I would learn. Questions that this team needs to answer to get back to the national championship game. I like this one a lot, Jack. I'm going to say that you came up with it, so we'll go to you first.
And I wonder what he's going to go with. I wonder what he could possibly go with.
No, I mean, there are a few. Like the first one I will say is that I don't know if Notre Dame is ever going to have a leadership problem necessarily, just because the kind of kid that this place attracts, and because of Marcus Freeman's leadership at the top and the coaching staff and all that they do. But I think when you lose Xavier Watts, whose communication leadership was so huge in the back end, and Howard Cross and Riley Mills in the middle, and Jack Kaiser, who was the heartbeat of that defense, and Mitchell Evans and Riley Leonard on the offensive side of the ball, like, you lose a ton of leadership who were consistent leaders over the past couple of years. When you look at a lot of the returning starters on this team, they're mostly juniors and a few sophomores. It's Drake Bowen, it's Jeremiah Love, it's Adon Schuler. You got a few seniors on the offensive line in Emil Wagner and Ashton Craig and Billy Schrouth. But the leadership of this team, I think, is going to lean younger, and without not just the play of guys like Watson, Kaiser, and et cetera, but the leadership they provided. I don't think Notre Dame turns that team around after NIU and really rips off, 13 wins in a row. So the big question I have is, how do they replace all that leadership? Because the storylines, when we write about it in fall camp and spring ball, can get a little tired, but we write them because leadership is really, really important in a 16-game football season. And I'm curious to see who steps up.
So Mike framed this question in the vein of, how do they get back to where they were, which is national championship game? And love him or hate him, Riley Leonard became a quarterback worthy of playing in the national championship game. So my question is, and we spent a lot of time talking about it earlier, more so about the personnel, but the overarching big question is, does Notre Dame have a national championship caliber quarterback, or someone who can get them there on the roster? I know maybe you need another swig of water because you spent the first 2 minutes talking, but that's all I got for that question, Jack. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Does Notre Dame have a championship caliber quarterback? Because at the end of the day, it always comes down to that. Yep. It's the most important position, arguably in sports. I'll go with National Hockey League goaltender, maybe being right up there with it, but like quarterback probably takes the cake. If you're going 1A, 1B, some people will just go flat 1 and 2. It's quarterback, man. Notre Dame needs to have a good one.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about the name so much in the competition, the bottom line is whatever Notre Dame picks, they just got to be right. And even if they are right, maybe if they don't have that guy on the roster, none of this matters anyway. They just have to have that guy and correctly identify him. My next one's about the receiver room. I think you touched on this earlier. Like, how much does that room get upgraded because you no longer have the backstop of Riley Leonard's legs to fall back on? I think Leonard was a really good quarterback for last year's team because they had questions on the offensive line. And I mean, obviously the offensive line played better than probably any of us expected. It got much better throughout the course of the season, but they needed Leonard to bail them out a couple times each game. And I think if the receivers can make it so that a quarterback can sit in the pocket and pick apart defensives downfield, it will go a long way to bring this offense to where Notre Dame needs to be. And I think on paper they're better. Malachi Fields is much more productive at the power 4 level than anyone Notre Dame brought in last year. Jaden Greathouse looks like he's ready to explode. Jordan Faison is a very solid complimentary option, in my opinion. Will Pauling has been a solid complimentary option. There are guys like KK Smith, you mentioned, Logan Saldate, Micah Gilbert, who can emerge as really good depth in that room. But we need to see it.
if you don't mention Cam Williams, this chat's gonna go crazy, man. So I'm gonna throw his name out there, Cam Williams. My next one. Can Notre Dame capture the same vibes that it had last year? Because like you're never going to completely replicate that or carbon copy. You know, the DNA is always going to be a little bit different. But Jack, I don't know about you. I think you'd agree with me. I think the people in the chat would agree. Mike Singer would agree. It just felt right last year. Ever since NIU, like it got to a point in, I would say once they won that Louisville game and they got to that first bye week and they were able to take a breath, you kind of felt like they were just going to keep winning. That's exactly what they did. So can you just kind of recreate those vibes? Because they were so good, even all through the playoffs, all the way up to the national championship game. It's just like every time the Notre Dame main account released something on social media, you knew it was going to be good. You knew the people were going to latch onto it. You don't get that everywhere. Like I follow a few other college football programs, somewhere that were in the playoff, and I was like, I don't know, what Notre Dame has going is a little bit more special. So recreate the vibes because you ride those vibes sometimes all the way into the second to last week of January, like they did this past season.
Oh, and this was something on defense. Like there are a few questions on the defensive line that need to be answered in the affirmative. Like, does Bryce Young take the step we all expect him to take? Are Boubacar Traore and Jordan Patello healthy? And more to the point, are they who they were before they suffered season-ending injuries? Are the defensive tackles good enough? And does Notre Dame have enough quality defensive tackles to maintain a rotation for 16 games? There are a few questions on the defensive line, and obviously you need a really good defensive line to get to the national championship. That's ultimately what fell Notre Dame, is that the defensive line injuries finally caught up to them in that game. I think it's a big reason Ohio State was so successful in the first half. So I would say of those three questions, the health, Bryce Young, the D tackles, need to be answered in the affirmative.
To add on to the whole quarterback discussion, like the receivers should be better, offensive line should be better, running backs should be the same, so it's better. It's like everywhere it should be a better offense. Leonard was perfect quarterback for last year's team. Like maybe
I kind of agree with this
drop back.
With Justin with Sniper here. It's all looking great on offense, except like there's no tight end.
But does Notre
Dame
maybe
there is one? I don't know.
Maybe it's very much like it's very much like, all right, Eli Roden, you've had this kind of hype for 3 years. Prove it.
Does Notre Dame use the tight end like they used to? So it's like, is it that important? And I'm running 12 and 13. Swan Dong, appreciate the two as always. I always love the $2 super chat, Swan Dong. Topic number 5 here in today's Notre Dame 6-pack. For watching on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Let's talk about the combine. I believe it's time to. I'll actually throw it back to Jack on this one. Draft stock, projections, what they need to prove.
He loves this place, this stuff. So that's a good place to start, is with Jack.
I thought, and Jack, you could probably talk 20 minutes straight on this. So good luck cramming it into 6 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I will start with the guys that we expect to be at the top of the draft for Notre Dame, and that's the defensive back, Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison. In reading a lot of the reports, they're both second-round guys. I think PFF had Watts at 40 and Morrison at 62. I think with Morrison, the tape is first-round caliber, but the hip injury is just like hip movement is so important for a cornerback. And I think teams are justifiably a little wary to freaking terrified of that. And it obviously sucks for Morrison because he very much earned the right to have his name called in the first round throughout his career, but sometimes that's how it goes. So he needs to prove the medical evaluation. Xavier Watts, I think, the instincts, the ball skills, all first round caliber. The issue is that, like, does he have the straight line speed required to be a first rounder as a 5'11", 6 foot safety? He's listed at 6 foot. Is probably going to measure out at like 5'11". I was having this discussion with another beat writer. Like, yeah, Kyle Hamilton was a first round pick at 4'5'9", 40, but he was also 6'4". So there's a big difference between those two. But I mean, I would love Watts or Morrison on my team.
Yeah, the other guys from Notre Dame in this draft that you would love to have on your team. I mean, I'm looking at the story that you did, Jack, on where these guys are kind of falling on the big board right now. I don't know if there's a whole lot of other guys where you're like, yeah, you need to draft him, right? Like there's a clear cutoff with those DBs, but I am curious, like Jack Kaiser, is he a JD Bertrand comp where did JD go in the fifth or sixth round?
He went in the fifth. It was like JD, Hart, and Estime, probably not in that order. I forget the order, but it was all within like 15 picks in the fifth.
Yeah, and he played some special teams as a rookie, right? And so like you take someone like him, but then the questions with like Mitchell Evans in the injury history, and that's probably a big reason why he didn't have the senior season at Notre Dame that he wanted to, is because he went into that year rehabbing an ACL injury. Guess who's rehabbing an ACL injury right now? Riley Mills. He spoke to the media today, and he sounds confident, but he missed 3 really big games in his career, and you would have loved to see him play in those, and he would probably have more draft stock right now, right, if he didn't tear that ACL and he played against Ohio State in the national championship. One of the crazier comments that I've seen is that Notre Dame would have definitively won the national championship if Riley Mills was playing in that game. I tend to think that Notre Dame needed a little bit more than just Riley Mills, but it wouldn't have hurt Notre Dame. Of course you want Riley Mills playing in that game. So Howard Cross, Riley Mills spoke really highly of him today. It looks like he's a fringe pick. Jack, do I have that right? If he's the number 27, like is he a free agent at this point, or would you be surprised if he got picked?
Wasn't he like 137 on the big board?
I don't know. I have him. You have him as 273 in number 27 position ranking. Is that
right?
Oh,
that's Cross. You said
Cross.
Yeah.
No, I switched over to Cross.
Oh, really? That's my bad. No, Cross. I think the size certainly hurts him. I think he wasn't as explosive in the back half of 24 as we saw him in 23. And when you're his size at D tackle, you need that explosiveness. So I think those drills are going to be really important for him. And you obviously chalk up a lot of that to his ankle injury. Like he was clearly a shell of himself during the college football playoff. So I would be curious to see if he rises after a strong combine. But yeah, I mean, 227, that's a fringe draft pick. A guy who I would kind of want on my team it's Mitch Evans. I think he strikes me as, if you want a Notre Dame comp, like what Brock Wright is doing in the league, but better with Evans is like good blocking tight end. Like if he's your number 1 tight end, you probably need to upgrade. But if he's your number 2 tight end, you're in really good shape. I like Evans a lot in that role. He just probably doesn't have the wiggle and movement skills necessary to be that downfield threat a lot of teams look for. But obviously testing is important for him. Riley Leonard on PFF's big board showed up at like 116, which is the top half of the 4th round. And I know this is going to surprise a lot of Notre Dame fans, but teams are going to look at what he did the second half of that season and the physical tools and his performance at the Senior Bowl and in a really, 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 really bad quarterback draft class. I mean, it has not been this bad in a long time. Actually, yes, it has. 2021 was this bad. But
what do you have against Quinn Ewers, man? I'm kidding.
In a really, 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 really bad quarterback class, I think some team is going to see Leonard's tools and the makeup. Obviously, all these guys are going to pass the character evaluations with flying colors. We know that. But particularly the quarterback position, that's important. Someone's going to see Leonard's physical tools and makeup and the way he improved throughout the season, and they're going to take a flyer on him as probably a 4th round pick.
So it's crazy. We talk about all the guys that through circumstances out of their control or whatever, their stock went down. All these guys from Notre Dame that we just talked about, Riley Leonard's skyrocketed. Like in early September, you'd probably be crazy to be talking about him as an NFL draft pick. Now, after what he did in the season and at the Senior Bowl, like you said, Jack, dude, I would take him in the 4th or 5th round. Like in a class where you're not going to get your guy as a quarterback in the 1st round, dude, take a flyer on a 4th or 5th rounder, and that's what Leonard is, and I think it could work.
Right, yeah, right. It went from this guy should get benched, according to some fans, and now it's a draftable guy, 4th, 5th round. Notre Dame hasn't had what was it? Book went in the tail end of the 4th round a few years ago.
Yeah, when I was watching Riley Leonard,
I believe that surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, he went higher than he should have.
I don't think that it's going to be the surprise that it was with Book with Leonard, because he got Notre Dame, helped Notre Dame, whatever you want to say, to the national championship. Like he played in that game, and in the 3rd or 4th quarter played pretty well.
I feel like I've seen enough tweets out there talking about Josh Allen where people Riley Leonard saying that he's like Josh Allen.
So
there's going to be one team.
Cannot stress this enough. Riley Leonard is not Josh Allen.
The
The
arm
difference
strength
in
is
not just the arm strength, but like the arm elasticity, the ability to throw from different angles. Like the throwing off balance. I mean, it's just not in the same with respect to Riley Leonard, like that, not in the same stratosphere.
For this next,
yeah, go ahead. Let's move
for this next one. I feel like it's good. Let's give Tyler 3 minutes. Let's give Jack 3 minutes. Let's talk a little. We're not maybe always going to do non-football topics for this show, but I liked it for this week. Let's talk about the women's hoops first, Tyler.
I just keep shouting out Justin ND Sniper. He thanked me. Now I'm going to go back to him. So I'm gonna cut into a little bit of my time and say, I do think that Riley Leonard had a surprisingly good passing game against Josh Allen. But what's going to hold him back in the NFL, I think, the way that Riley Leonard runs, he would take some shots in the NFL that like he was not taking in college, and you can't have that. So I would fear for Riley Leonard in the NFL in that vein. So now I got 2.5 minutes to talk Notre Dame women's hoops. I thought I was going to be talking about a team that had already won the ACC regular season conference championship on this show, but because NC State beat the Fighting Irish on Sunday, that's not the case. If we were doing this show on Friday, though, Jack, I would 100% again be expecting to talk about a team that has won the ACC regular season conference title because they get a home game against a Florida State team that has a really good scorer in Tania Latson, who might be leading the NCAA in scoring still. It's been her and Hannah Hidalgo neck and neck 1-2 all year. But Florida State's the type of team that overly relies on that player. And to do that on the road, like Notre Dame's going to come out and play a better defensive game than it played against NC State. That probably means Latson has a worse shooting game than normal. Maybe she doesn't even score 20 points when she averages 25. And then you're all of a sudden talking about a Florida State team that's going to need to do way more with everyone else to win. I don't think that's happening. Plus, Notre Dame lost once in 3 months, guys. So, let's stop talking about all the deficiencies and holes that this team may have, even though I wrote about one of those at blueandgold.com about 24 hours ago. I do think there is a little bit of a problem in the post in that 5-star center Kate Koval is just not as far along as Notre Dame thought she would be right now. If she was good for 15 and 10 and maybe not even the numbers as much as affecting possessions on both ends of the floor, she's not even on the floor right now. And I trust Niele Ivey. That was a shot that I took for writing that article was, hey, this is Niele Ivey's fault for only playing her 4 minutes in a 50-minute ball game, double overtime against NC State. She only played 4 minutes. I think there's a reason for that. I trust Niele Ivey, but I also trust this Notre Dame team to take care of business against Florida State, win the ACC, number 1 seed in Greensboro next week, number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, even after the NC State loss. That's what Charlie Cream of ESPN has them projected as. It's pretty much been that for a couple months now since they righted the ship from the Cayman Islands Classic. So if you had to tell me or ask me who's winning the national championship right now on February 26th, I'm a little biased because I see this team every single day, but I still think I'm saying Notre Dame. Why? Notre Dame, I've seen them beat the number 1 team in the country in Texas. I've seen them beat USC, UConn, all these other teams. So one slip up against NC State, not changing my mind. I expect them to win the ACC on Thursday. They'll set up a kind of a weird game on Sunday against Louisville. They don't need to do anything in that game, but I know they don't like the Cardinals. So maybe they do show up in the regular season on a high note there.
You wrote that good article about if they don't win the national championship, the post play is going to be wide. The vibe I got, and correct me if I'm wrong, we don't need to spend 3 minutes talking about the men's team. The vibe I got, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that the post presence hurts much more on the defensive end than it does on offense because you worry about in the Final Four going up against a girl like Lauren Betts, that you're concerned that you can't get stops against her.
100%. Yeah, it's the possession affecting too. I thought Koval was going to be this player that you plant her out there and all of a sudden, and she was this against lesser competition, but against these higher level teams, guards are pulling her out of the paint and using ball screens on her that she doesn't know what to do with. There's a disconnect there. It's the learning curve. You're seeing the freshman wall in real time, and that's just tough for a team that has national championship aspirations, and she was supposed to be a big figure, a big piece in that.
For sure. Real quick on the men's team, they're actually playing right now. They're down by 11 at the under-8 media timeout at Clemson, which is along the lines of what we expected. It was like a 4-point game late in the first half, and then Clemson went on a little run to get some distance, and they haven't quite been able to close that. They're definitely, I think the SMU game was a long overdue wake-up call for them, in that, like, I think they've just got so obliterated in that game that they kind of took a look at themselves and they're like, who are we? How do we want to finish this season? And they are definitely playing harder tonight. Like, this is not SMU. This is just, they're on the road against a top 15 team. This is what everyone knew was going to happen, but it is what it is. They have a semi-winnable road game against Wake Forest and 2 very winnable home games against Stanford and Cal coming up. I don't think a lot of people are questioning Micah Shrewsbury as an X's and O's coach, as certainly as an evaluator, and questioning if this can work. I don't think Micah Shrewsbury forgot how to coach this season, because you ask anyone around college basketball, they'll tell you Micah Shrewsbury is one of the best X's and O's coaches around. But I do think he definitely overestimated the personnel on his roster, and he was kind of operating like he had a much better team than he did this season, and that has kind of led to some of the offensive woes we've seen, and the fact that this team doesn't really have an identity right now. So I'm interested to see how they finish up the season, and they need to get after it in the transfer portal. Otherwise, this isn't going to get off the ground.
Great timing. Mike, you're going to have to work on this mute button, man.
Sorry, man. In between my appearances on the show, I'm click-clacketing away. I coughed a couple times. I'm muting. Rookie mistake. Jack, what I was saying was, well done talking about the men's team. It's not the easiest thing to do right now, but I thought you put that very well. So that is going to do it, folks. Please hit the thumbs up on this video if you have not done so yet. That was the first installment of the Notre Dame 6-pack. We'll be doing this every Wednesday, time TBD, 8 p.m. tonight. But I don't know, maybe we'll go earlier some weeks. I don't know. We'll have the crack staff talk about it behind the scenes. But yeah, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're new. Head over to blueandgold.com, where these guys write every day, several articles a day about the Notre Dame athletics that you love. So that's going to do it for tonight's Notre Dame 6-pack. Appreciate you all, and we'll catch you next time.